My eyes were still squeezed closed. The sun was still beating down on me, as was the thunderous applause of the crowd. I panted, catching my breath, basking in the ephemeral glory. The microphone whined with feedback as the mistress of ceremonies began to address the crowd of over 1,000. "She is serving you commitment," she declared over the bellow of the mic. I opened my eyes, still panting. My skin was on fire all over, not just the parts that were exposed to the sun. I locked eyes with the head diva, smiling. I began clopping forward, my feet straining to burst from the thin straps of my Jessica Simpson wedges. I was nearly at the end of the red carpet runway when the boom of the microphone thundered over the crowd again. It was the mistress of ceremonies, adding, "This young lady we've just witnessed, she's not only committed, she may need to be committed." My smile faded. Ow. But I just did that. I became a star. I just became, for 6 seconds, Katy Perry. I reached the end of the red carpet, just inches from the crowd being restrained by barricades and red rope. The ocean of faces stretched along the entire width of the Pines Harbor. I looked over my shoulder. Casey sauntered like a rock star right behind me. He hoisted my brown duffel bag. I turned back around and continued clopping onto the wooden boardwalk that snaked through the crowd. On either side of me, the excited chatter of hyped up strangers overlapped. "What was that?" "Yes, mama." "Holy hell, honey. Can I get your picture?" "Is this what it feels like to be a rock star?" I shouted over my shoulder at Casey. He and I kept weaving through the cordoned off passage, especially for the drag queens disembarking the invasion boat. Several seconds later, our path ended in a patch of mulch. I continued tottering forward slowly. "Keep it moving," someone yelled behind me. The mulch led to an up-ramp, which I lurched forward to climb. Casey and I emerged onto a promenade that led to 2 nightclub staircases, plus a strip of miniature business storefronts. The largest was the Pines Pizzeria. A boisterous smattering of fellow queens was gathered up here. This was probably the least crammed in I'd felt all day since entering the subway back in New York City 6 hours ago at 8 in the morning. Here on the promenade, drag artists who'd come off the boat ahead of me snapped photos of each other. They also posed with and for some of the onlookers, including families with children. The queen's chatter revealed they were feeling a combination of fatigue, relief, euphoria, and hunger for the afternoon's next outlet for adventure, at which they might have another taste of being divas worshipped and objectified for their unscrupulous beauty. "These wedges are getting old," I heard myself tell Casey. He smiled. "You're doing good, girl." He passed me my brown duffel bag. I tried to balance myself as I looked around at the other queens conversing with regular people. I thought, I can't do this the rest of the day. I need to get out of this shirt dress and especially these shoes. And if I'm feeling this uncomfortable, how are the other girls feeling right now? The ones who sacrificed a lot more comfort than I did. Anyway, Darin, don't change yet. In a minute. Enjoy it for another minute. Take photos. A face floated into my mind. RBs. On the boat just now when we were pulling up, I'd seen the sea of faces greeting, cheering for us. Even the police boats blew their horn in support. The officers had stood on their boats waving at us. I'd felt as though a grime, a slime, a shame baked into me long ago was suddenly being vacuumed up and out of my throat and then snatched by the summer breeze. It had been whisked over the top of the boat, swept out to the great South Bay behind our ship. And the image that had flashed in my mind was the scene in The Little Mermaid when Ursula steals Ariel's voice. It was that. exactly. The only difference being I was being evacuated of something rotten, not precious. I now entertained calling and telling RB the bizarre, uplifting news. I didn't want to nudge him about the Little Mermaid. I also knew, though, that he'd be mature enough to appreciate the metaphor and be happy for me. I also wanted to tell him how I'd felt like Lady Liberty. That moment I'd stood up out of my squat on the runway, rising from the two-dimensional darkness into the three-dimensional color, the way Katie had done in her concert. I'd held my torch, my microphone, heralding my power. It was that glorious moment when I'd literally screamed, "I made it!" that had caused the crowd to create its deafening roar. I had to call and tell RB. But what does AA tell us to do? To take the opposite action. Remember? AA teaches us that our instincts are awry. You're high right now, after all, on feelings. Plus, he knows what you're waiting until September to tell him. He knows because he has to, right?